A warm welcome to another episode of The Trading Bell. We're coming to you from the Nairobi Securities Exchange here in Westlands. And today on the show, we'll be hosting the Chief Executive Officer for Longhorn Publishers. Mr. Simon Ngigi will be joining us to discuss more about what's been happening in the publishing space and who really is Simon Ngigi. Here now is his profile. Simon has over 20 years' experience in finance, strategy, leadership and management. He joined Longhorn Publishers in May 2015 as the Group Managing Director. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Nairobi. Mr. Ngigi has previously worked in motor, pharmaceutical and publishing industries. His main objective is to drive the growth agenda at Longhorn Publishers Limited. Join me for the conversation. Welcome, Mr. Simon.
Hi, Mr. Agina. How are you?
Please have a seat.
Thank you.
It has been an interesting beginning of 2018. Of course, education sector, a lot happening with the curriculum review taking shape. From a publishing point of view, how has the curriculum affected your business?
Thank you very much, Mr. Agina, and thank you for having me here today. Longhorn is always delighted to come here at the Nairobi Securities Exchange and talk about our industry. As you're aware, about 1.5 years ago, we came to this exchange and asked the public for funds to fund our expansion program. We shall probably be talking about that later.
Sure.
And we managed to get 500 million shillings, so always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right.
Right now, our industry has been going through some dramatic changes over the last 2 or 3 years. Kenya has always been a beacon and the leader in education reform within the countries that we operate. And
Sure.
Longhorn operates in more than 11 countries at this time. But it had lagged behind Rwanda, Zambia, DRC, and other places, which already had a competency-based curriculum for a long time. Our country, for the last 10, 20 years, has been working on a knowledge-based curriculum. And that is really geared towards understanding the subject, but for the purposes of getting a white-collar job, ultimately. I think I can summarize it that way.
Sure.
And then there was a very major gap, skills gap, for the lower-end work, like carpentry, masonry, or teaching and others. But everybody was just aiming for the office job. And I think with the increase in population, then there was going to be a major mismatch because everybody would be going for very little jobs at the top and nothing in the middle.
Sure.
So the competency-based curriculum, which is one of the major changes that has happened in the last 1 year, enables the learners to learn the subject, understand it with a view of being competent in that area, without necessarily having to get right at the top.
Yeah.
So wherever in the education system you fall off, you should be able to get something worthy to do.
Yes.
And that has already happened. Now, Longhorn is one of the leaders in the books for that curriculum. We've got our books right now in the market. They've been there for the last 2 months.
Yes.
And it has actually worked very well. So that's one change. The second change was the distribution system.
Yeah.
For a long time, there has been complaints from the general public that the children in the schools are not getting the books. Yet the government has been sending the money since 2003, after the free primary education and free secondary education came up.
Correct.
So to address that, the government decided to buy books directly from publishers. That is currently ongoing. And Longhorn, I'm happy to report, has actually distributed more than half of the counties now with a view of ending it in about a month's time. So those are kind of the major changes that have happened in our industry. The industry continues to face certain challenges. We'll probably talk about that later. But overall, those are the changes that have been affecting us here in Kenya. But in other areas where we operate also, there have been some changes, but we can talk about that later.
Of course. And as 2018 kicks off, right now in the 3rd month, perhaps talk to us about what is in the horizon for the business this year. Which areas are you seeing growth coming from?
That's a very good question. Again, our industry, we are the only public company in the publishing sector. And I think that will be true across almost the entire African continent. And therefore, there's not much data to gauge what's happening to our industry. But we do have a unique industry. We serve overwhelmingly the education sector or school-going children. But Longhorn, over the last 2.5 years, has actually de-emphasized the textbook business because we could see right 2 years ago that there's going to be major changes in that sector.
Yeah.
So what we've done is to segment our business and ensure that we do not focus and rely on the textbook market overwhelmingly. 3 years ago, we were somewhere over 90% of our business was textbooks. Happy to report that right now the textbooks constitute less than half of our business. How have we done it? We've decided to segment our business into non-textbooks and given a lot of emphasis there, as well as the tertiary market. Yes. So this is the post-secondary education, as well as creative works for children and adults. And this would be the storybooks that could be read across the African continent. Over and above that, we have also ensured that we are among the leading digital publishers in the region. All right. So those are the changes that have happened. And now, having done that, then our income levels were no longer reliant on the textbook market alone. And that's the reason why we defied what I would say was the norm last year. Sure. And reported a 70% increase, 70% increase in our profit after tax. Yes.
And just linked to this, Simon, of course, you did raise some capital that you mentioned earlier on. How did this play a big part in terms of financing the digital transition for the company?
I can tell you that if we had not come to the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the numbers I've just told you would never have happened. We got 530 million, and more than 100 million of that went into digitizing. We are now the market leaders in digitized products. We have not only digitized, but put them in what you call e-learning platforms.
Yes.
Which means the book is now chunked, like pieces, putting smart pieces, so that a child can go to a subject that they are not quite sure about and understand it better than others, which is a major change from digitizing a print book into a digital form. Because all you've done is just move it into another method. Yeah. And that's key. None of our competitors have reached there yet. The second part is augmented reality. This is the future of learning. What is that? When you're reading a book, either on e or on print, you can image through your phone or any other device on a certain subject matter. For example, we're talking about volcanicity. I think it would be very abstract for a child who is born in Mombasa to even understand what a volcano is.
Sure.
But when they image it with our books and our augmented technology, you're actually going to get inside a volcano. So it actually leaves the book and goes into what you are talking about. It then talks about the volcano. You actually see it. You feel like you're already inside it, and then all the parts of the volcano are numbered. And that helps you. It's augmenting the reality of what you're reading. Yeah. That's one thing that we've done. And the second part that we are going to, which is uncharted waters for digital learning, is artificial intelligence, which means we are able to use softwares to gauge the students' understanding and weaknesses in certain areas. And that enables even home learning. Yeah. Which ultimately is the way to go, because you don't necessarily have to go to school to pass an exam. And we have reached there. So just to answer your question, that would never have happened without the monies that we got from the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And that has given us market leadership and a big edge in how we deliver education to our children. All right. So that was one major area. The second area that we got the money and invested in was geographical diversification. We realized that children are the same across Africa. Our vision is to be the #1 provider of innovative learning solutions in Africa. We want to go to all the African countries, starting with Anglophone. So we have spent over 150 million shillings in expansion into Zambia, Malawi, Namibia, Zimbabwe, most of the countries that speak English on the southern part of Africa. And we've done that very well. We've also gone to South Sudan. And of course, our East African member countries are all within our ambit. So it has actually been a very good thing. And that actually is the real reason why our profitability and our growth has remained steady when all our competitors and other people have actually gone down.
All right. And the digital literacy program indeed offers numerous opportunities for publishing companies. How do you intend to tap into this niche?
In order to scale digital learning across Kenya or even across Africa where we have operations, the government is a major player because public schools are funded by the government. And we're very gratified that the Kenyan government has decided to give devices to children in schools, because then that gets the gadget in order to get the software, which is our e-learning platform, in there. And then we get the scale that we need to get this rolled out in a much bigger scale. So the digital learning program of the government is working well for us. Obviously, it hasn't reached the milestones that they had already planned 5 years ago. I think they had mentioned that all the children in schools will have gotten gadgets by around now. But even the ones that are already there, we are working with Jomo Kenyatta University of Technology, JKUAT, to get our e-learning platform in there for them to be taken to schools. And that has worked very well. The future of education will definitely be e-learning. And there's no question about that. As I said, it will then evolve into artificial intelligence and augmented learning, which is what we're already doing now.
All right. And for a layman, Simon, what does this do eventually to our society that is keen on embracing digital learning from an innovative point of view for the learners and also for the teaching staff? What is the end game? What's the impact this will have in Kenya and even in the countries that you're also running operations?
I think the end game is an enhanced socio-cultural environment within Africa, which is a very good thing. Africa or Africans have been accused of not reading enough. In fact, they say if you want to hide anything, put it in a book. And I think it's because the print book has never changed for very many years. I think for hundreds of years it's been the same. And our industry is probably the only industry that has never really changed and had a major disruption. This is the first time that is coming. And so you'll have a lot of information and material now being shared, not just in the learning fraternity, but even the general public, in a much better and faster way than before. If you wanted to read a book, you'd have had to go to a bookshop, and then you'd have to pay, line up, pay the book, and then you go and read it. And after you read it, you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
But right now you can go to your phone or any device that you have and actually have exactly the same experience that you would have had in the book. So with the younger generation embracing learning more on a digital way, we actually see a major transformation of our societies in how we access information and how we deal with information. And what I expect is that the literacy levels and the learning levels all over life, because learning is supposed to be for life, will be enhanced for the benefit of the continent.
All right. And as we come to the tail end, Simon, looking at the publishing industry, of course, it has been competitive with time, and we've also seen more publishing companies scaling up investments in Africa and in Kenya. Perhaps from where you sit, how significant is the competition in the country? And secondly, there are also issues that have been cropping up, and this is, of course, copyright issues as well as piracy, which has dented heavily a number of publishing companies.
I think our industry, number one, is, as I said, it's a bit unique because if you look at the critical mass of learning children, just for Kenya alone, we have 15 million people who every single day wake up to go to school. When it comes to competition for those 15 million, we find that 95% of the people going will go for the easier part, which is the primary textbooks and secondary textbooks, because it's not that difficult to come up with those. But when it comes to technical issues like accountancy books, agricultural books, veterinary, tertiary in total, digital learning, creative works for children, you actually start finding that not many are willing to invest as much because either the returns, according to them, may not be as good as they should. But for us, we have the competitive advantage that everything we do in Kenya, we can then be able to immediately scale it across the region where we have a presence.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that competition is not a major factor. It definitely is. But I think the products that we offer, including the quality of the products that we offer, give us the competitive edge that is much harder to copy. That's one. On the challenge of counterfeiting, this has been a major menace for us, and we lose 25% of our business. This is 1.5...
This translates to about how much?
1.5 billion shillings is lost in our industry of textbooks, which is a 6 billion business. 25% is lost through counterfeit. That's huge.
Yeah.
And it's whoever is counterfeiting is actually committing a criminal offense. But if you look at the penalties of 800,000, even if you have counterfeited millions and millions of shillings, it almost looks like an incentive.
Yeah.
We've been working very well with the police department. We've worked with the Kenya Copyright Board at the AG's office to ensure that that's done. And also our association, Kenya Publishers Association, where I chair the anti-counterfeit committee, has done a lot in trying to sensitize people about that. We are now having a tag, which we're putting in all our books. One can actually image it, send that message to a number on the Safaricom, and you'll be able to tell whether the book is counterfeit or not. So a lot of efforts are being made. But having said that, I think every industry faces its challenges. It's up to us to come up with even more advanced ways of dealing with piracy.
Sure.
But the right way to deal with piracy once and for all is e-learning.
All right.
Because the encryption technology that is adopted is much harder for the people who are counterfeiting to get it. Okay. But as long as we continue having the print book, it's not that difficult to counterfeit, but we'll always continue putting intervening measures to make it happen.
All right.
Yes.
And finally, do you see any opportunities in the second-hand book business?
I don't think so, because this is intellectual property that belongs to an author. Every time that we create a book and sell it off, number one, the government will buy it and would like to buy the IP from the author, the intellectual property from the author. I think it would be very bad if we are going to deny the authors their royalties for their hard work. And in fact, we'll be demeaning the importance of intellectual property in our society if we recycle intellectual property. So what I would suggest is, if the schools have already bought the books and they want to hand them over to the next, the class that is coming up, that's absolutely fine. But every time that we say that we should have an open market for used books, then the counterfeits just take effect, and it will be impossible then to police it.
All right.
Yes.
Many thanks, Simon Ngigi.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
We really look forward to seeing what 2018 has in store for the publishing sector.
Thank you very much. It looks bright enough with the challenges. We also think we have what it takes to deal with the challenges that are there.
A pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much again.
Well, that is Simon Ngigi, the Chief Executive Officer for Longhorn Publishers, just walking us through some interesting aspects of what has been defining the publishing space, and he's quite bullish that this year things are looking up. Well,